Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. We are every week, every Friday at noon. Today's episode is called Bad Girls Gone Good. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. The person who is joining with me today is somebody who I love very deeply, and she came into my life to be an employee of the recovery store and ended up one of my closest friends and my family. And we are so similar. We have gone through so much together and have leveled up and leveled up and leveled up together. We are so similar in our backgrounds. Almost identical. There'll be little nuances that she has that I don't, and vice versa, but it's uncanny how the universe has brought us together so that we could actually, see in each other what we need to keep doing and have a safe place to say, yeah, let's not, let's call bullshit on that. And even within the store, there's been so much that we've had to level up and learn. She's my manager my day manager at the recovery store, and I've had like codependency and and micromanagement, and then like we've had people in the store that worked for us, and everything was a learning experience and leveling up and just more recovery, and then the things that we individually walked through together and got to like support each other through. So I just love her heart, and I love her focus, and I love what we do together at the recovery store when we're helping people, answering questions, being there, and I don't know, it's wonderful. But and we're not done healing, but we are definitely night and day to what we were, and that is for sure. And just in the past few years of knowing, the past couple of years at least of knowing each other, so much has happened that we've watched each other grow immensely. But just telling each other like the stories of where we were and the things that we did, and it's uncanny how we get each other. And this is one of the benefits if you're new to recovery, or if you've maybe thinking about recovery, that we get in recovery, is we get to feel like we're not terminally unique, and that there are people who we could tell that the things that had happened to us and the things that we did without any kind of judgment, without anybody thinking that they're better than us, really understanding, looking past the behavior to cause and condition, to understand, to have compassion and support to why we felt like we needed to do these things. Oftentimes in recovery, we'll look at things that we've done and we'll feel bad about some character defects that we had or some bad behavior, but at the same time, there's this voice in the back of our mind going, but it also kept you alive in that situation, but it also was what you needed to do to be okay here, and it's not all bad. It's just that there are things that we learned to survive, and things that we learned to do that we thought we needed to, and stories about who we thought we needed to be okay, to be loved, to not be abandoned, to not be hurt, to have the power, to have the money, or to have whatever we needed, to take care of somebody else even, that kept us in the same dysfunction that we needed to protect ourselves from. And so it became this loop that we lived in after a while, where the things that kept us alive are keeping us in the same situation that's threatening our survival. The codependent and the self-abandoning and manipulative ways are keeping us around people who we feel like we need to have those kinds of relationships with, to keep us believing that we need to use those tools, air quote. And there's just this bottoming that happens when you get a tool or an asset that you think you really need becomes a weapon turned on yourself, where you just know that this thing is actually causing me to stay stuck, to keep my world small, to perpetuate shame or guilt or fear, to keep me with people that I can't level up with, I shouldn't be with, and not feel a sense of freedom and self-esteem that we could feel if we weren't acting in these ways, right? That we're not bad people trying to be good. We are people with sick programming, in growing up in an environment that we felt like we needed to survive in. But it's kind of cute to call us bad girls gone good, because by society standards, we could have been considered bad girls. And I mean, and I say it with a smile, so evidently I'm not, But yeah, so today I'm joined here with Lauren, and who I affectionately call Lo. And we're just going to have a real conversation about, what it was like, why we ended up feeling like we needed those kinds of tools to survive, and how it ended up affecting us and what we had to walk through and let go of and learn better ways of being to become where we're at now, which is night and day, like I said before, to where we were. And so if you've seen any of the other episodes, you probably heard a nauseating amount about my childhood. But for the purpose of maybe you haven't, I'll give you the elevator pitch about it. I grew up in an alcoholic home. I grew up in dysfunction. I grew up with a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and a lot of depression. I was told that I was the maker of my mom's misery. She didn't want to have me. She didn't want to stay married, and I was the reason why she felt like she had to. And she thought that it ruined her life. And I felt very unsafe in my house, and I felt very unseen, and I definitely didn't feel cared about. And so I grew up taking care of my sister and my brother to a degree, and I definitely felt like I needed to protect myself. I had a lot of fear. I felt like somebody was going to find my body, somebody was going to hit me too hard, or they weren't going to be there, they were going to neglect me too much, and somebody was going to find me sick or something, and nobody knew. And so, I learned at a very early age. My nickname was Ugly and Fat by the kids in school. My nickname from my dad was Ugly, but the kids in school called me Fat, and I felt very, very, very insecure. And I just had this idea, like, you know what, nobody's ever going to hurt me again. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to take care of other people. And it developed this power, this false power, that I was going to steamroll through life, and I was going to force it to happen. And an overdeveloped sense of who I thought I needed to be, fueled by a fear of being hurt and being abandoned, and away we go. I needed to be prettier, smarter, stronger, tougher, and I fortunately was comfortable enough in a lot of dysfunction that going from my house to stripping, to the streets, to anything that I was dealing with mafia, etc., was not that big of a difference. It's like that old saying we say all the time, which is, you ask a fish how the water is, and the fish says, what water? And so I grew up believing this is who I needed to be, and that way of learning how to be, I feel protected me to a point in my house. I feel like it did. Avoidance, self-abandonment, people-pleasing, etc., and then whatever. But then when I was out in the world, the silenced voice became a loud, angry voice, became a dominant voice. The quiet that I spent in my childhood shut down in my room became, you can't shut me up. And there was just so much I was running on, and I was just a danger to myself. I had no balance, no self-actualization, no idea who I should be, and I certainly had no self-love. Although if you asked me why I was doing what I was doing, I was saying it was because I needed to take care of myself. And I would have called it love, but it wasn't. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that we thought we needed to do, some of the things that were good for us maybe then, but ended up showing up as things we needed to heal, and have a great conversation about it. But first, we're going to hear from Lo, and she's going to tell us about her childhood a little bit and what brought her to the same type of headspace that she ended up with.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. This is a really, really good topic, especially for the both of us, because we have so much in common. It's almost unreal. We really do. I grew up in my parents split when I was 2 or 3 years old, and I remember just growing up without any father figure in the household, right? My dad was around, but it was at a distance. And so my grandparents moved in with us, and so we had these 2 war veterans. We had my grandfather who was in the Navy during World War II, and my grandmother who was a nurse. And they were both very children should be seen and not heard, do what you're told, don't talk back, hitting is okay. And I was the first one to get hit by my grandfather, and it was it was a very passive aggressive house. Anger was never spoken about. There wasn't, the only one that was really allowed to be angry was my grandfather, and my sisters and I grew up together, and we kind of helped raise each other, but my grandparents were our main like parental influence. And so when I started, it was my older sister who started getting in trouble, and we're all in long-term recovery, which is such a blessing. And my older sister was the first one that started getting into trouble, and I believed, and obviously I didn't know it at the time what I was doing, but looking back, I realized that I was acting out. It didn't matter if it was negative attention. I wanted you to look at me, right? Because I don't feel like I'm getting any sort of attention whatsoever, any sort of love, right? Dad's gone, right? Because parents are divorced. Mom's working 50 to 60 hours a week, usually 60, comes home and says, not right now, sweetheart. Not right now, sweetheart. And it hurt. It hurt. And so when I was around 12 years old, 13 years old, I started hanging around, or these older men that came into my life because of my older sister, were gang members, drug dealers, and gangsters. And I fell in love, I fell in love with that aspect of that tough man, right? Because I already have this tough man in my life. My dad's a tough man. My grandfather is a tough man. And I saw these men, and I was looking for some sort of parental guidance, but also to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Just validation from a man. And you're supposed to get that with your father, you know what I mean? And I, unfortunately, I didn't have that. And so I was looking to these men, these gang members and drug dealers, and just, sort of bad men, right, for this validation. And I got it. But I had to do things in order to get that validation, right? And that was to be the down-ass whatever, right? And I was good at it. Yeah. And I was good at it for a long time. And, and then I became the drug dealer. And I became the gang member. And, and I was off and running, and I started getting into trouble. And at 13 years old was the first time I went to juvenile hall, and I was proud of myself. I had this false sense of pride. Like, so you're proud of yourself, Lauren, for getting incarcerated? I had this delusion.
But within that system, though, that is leveling up. That's okay.
Right. It was that headspace is so delusional, right? And if you don't have the healthy outlets that a child needs, right? I'm 35 years old now. I'm 12, 13 years old when this is happening. I had no healthy outlets, right? My mom's doing the best that she can to support her family. I have, my grandparents over here that don't know what to do with these 3 kids, right? My twin sister's over here just smoking a little bit of weed. Older sister's over here doing other stronger things. And I'm over here like throwing up gang signs. Like they're like, they don't know what to do. Right. They're like, what's happening? And my mom's like, I can't deal with it, right? It doesn't mean she didn't try. She absolutely did try. She went to every counseling appointment. She came to group therapy. I never even made it to regular high school because I was in and out of juvie, and they were trying to do diversion. Diversion didn't work. Then I went to juvenile drug court, and I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't give it up. I would tell you what you needed to hear because I wanted to protect what I felt what was right for me, right? Because at this point I felt like drugs, alcohol, and gangs were my home, right? Because I didn't want what was at home, because nobody talked to each other, right? The only people that talked to each other were my sisters and I, right? And we were all pretty much doing the same thing. And so we shut everybody out. And it was,
It's kind of interesting too, because what on a deeper level we're really looking for is where we feel this sense of like powerlessness in how we're growing up, and we just really don't feel like we have what we need to be able to get what we need and to take care of ourselves. And so we go into this false power dynamic of being around people who are like acting tough, and we are attracted to that because we're looking for something that's gonna make us feel like we're part of what is powerful. Like that we are somehow going to be protected.
Because I felt weak.
Because we felt so powerless. Because when you're a child and you're a child and you have to follow what your parents are saying, even if you're in a normal childhood, there is an element of like having to be able to be vulnerable and let go and trust that your parents are going to lead the way, that they're going to show you, they're going to teach you, they're going to reflect back to you a healthy self-concept. And when you grow up in dysfunction, it's every man for themselves, and it's unhealthy and scary. And we feel so powerless, and there has to be a power. We're starving for a power, but we don't know where to look yet, right? And so we're looking for it to be anywhere but that childhood, anywhere but that place. And we're thinking, we could handle, look what we've been through. We can handle whatever. We're tough. If we've been through this, we're tough. We could do this, but we're attracted to the power. We're attracted to the people with the seeming power, and we're attracted to having the power, whatever it even looks like for girls growing up, feeling so powerless.
Yeah. And changing, I had this idea in my head. I was so caught up with what people thought about me, right? And if you didn't like me, I didn't give a shit. I cared so much what you thought about me, right? Because I didn't have somebody telling me like, oh, like you're, giving me a confidence boost or whatever you want to call it. I didn't have anybody really uplifting me or telling me anything. I had these gang members, right, telling me who to be. Right? They didn't realize, maybe they realized what they were doing. Who knows? Probably so, right? But it became this journey of how bad am I really, right? How far do I have to go, right? And it started out with little things, right? Selling drugs, right? Like just whatever the homies needed, I would bring it for them. If they needed a bottle and I wasn't old enough to go get one, I would steal it, right? It started with the basic stuff, and then I became the drug dealer, and then I'm bringing drugs into places where you shouldn't be bringing them into, you know what I mean? And the loyalty behind that, it was the mind state at the time was so unbelievably delusional, but I got this false sense of validation that I had arrived, that I was somebody. Yeah. And going through all of that, I'm so glad that I went through all of it, because when I got into enough trouble, right, when I was in my 20s, I got arrested when I was 20 years old, and it was in the newspaper. It was a big thing, and I got arrested with 2 firearms, bunch of ecstasy pills, and I was looking at a lot of prison time. Initially I was looking at 16 years. I knew that I wasn't going to get that much. That they just hit you with the big number, try to scare you, woo-ha, whatever, And I had felt like I had arrived, right? But when I went through that process, and then I realized the cold reality set in, they don't give a shit about me. No,
they don't. It's the most alone.
And
do
I felt
all that self-abandonment.
So alone. And my twin sister was the only person that was there for me. My mother too. But my twin sister and my mother. And that was it. I remember my mom sent me a book when I was in jail after I got sentenced and all that stuff. It was The Female Brain was the book that she sent me. And, my twin sister picked up the phone every time I called, you know what I mean? And I remember, I remember sitting in the courtroom, and they told me how much time I was looking at, and my twin sister came up to me and she said to me, what are you going to do? And I said, I knew what I got myself into. Like, I'm not, because the DA wanted me to tell, and I wouldn't cooperate, and so I went down by myself, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And I did it, and I was good at it, and I owned that, and I loved that. Like, I lived and breathed the streets for such a long time, and until I realized that it's just not me.
It's kind of interesting too, though, that you know, because we've talked so much about these things, that there is a lot that it's the school of life, and we've just learned so much from feeling like we have to be more than, like, we can't exhale, and we've just been through so much that there's not a lot of things that intimidate us. That we might get scared, but we won't back down, right? And we'll do things, and we'll have tough conversations with ourselves and other people, and we will want to keep leveling up. And so that same loyalty to a false power life, right? And being willing to drive ourselves to be better in the life that we were. The elements of that become assets that we can then use when they're not driven by ego, when they're not driven by so much fear and needing to be part of. The devotion towards it. I can't remember who said, I think it was probably my twin, honestly. I think Kristen said to me one time, she said, do you remember the devotion that you used to have for gangbanging? She was like, all I need you to do is take that same devotion and put that towards yourself. Can you do that? You know, and then I started getting this uncomfortable feeling like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am without all of that. Right, because you don't even know who you are, because you're so used to trying to be somebody that you're not, to get to fit in with something. And that's what's so crazy. I'll say this one thing, is that need that you mentioned earlier to be seen, right? But we put so much energy into the false self. So even who we presented to the world, right? We still weren't going to be seen. We were never really going to be seen that way. I never really felt like anybody really loved me, even when they said they did. Right. Because I wasn't showing them who I was. I didn't even know who I was. Right. I didn't love me. And we teach people how to treat us. You know what I mean? We teach people how to treat us. So I'm around these men, all men constantly. The only women I ever had in my life, I had like maybe one close girlfriend, and then I had my sisters. You know what I mean? And that was a huge thing that I had to break for myself. Coming into recovery was, I need another woman to tell me about myself. Right. I don't need a man to tell me about myself. And why is that? Because men are easier to manipulate than women are. Yeah. And I need strong women like you, like my sisters, right? Like my other spiritual mentors, as I like to call them, you know, to reflect what's really going on with me. Yeah. Because men will show us what they want us to be. And if we're learning about what it means to be a woman from men, then we're not going to learn what it really means to be a woman. And when we kept all the women far away because we didn't trust them, I had so much judgment about women because I projected all of my own shit because I knew what I was capable of, and I was thinking, if I'm capable of this, then they could be capable of this, and I didn't trust anybody. Yeah. I didn't trust anybody. But men, I felt like I could manipulate, and I'm sorry to say that's what I did, you know. But I didn't do it from I didn't do it from like trying to like hurt anyone. I did it from like this little girl scared of being alone, not going to have what she needed, and feeling like if I can pull people close to me that I feel like wanted something from me, I felt like as long as I had something they wanted, then I would have what I needed. Everything was transactional. Yeah. Even like everything was. Right. I never felt that anybody really knew me. And when people said that they loved me, I couldn't believe it because they didn't know who I was. I was so used to being somebody else. Yeah, I didn't even love myself, you know. Every single relationship that I was in, except for one, was physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, spiritually abusive. Yeah. Every single one. Yeah. You know, and I got into this this state of just hypervigilance constantly, like hypervigilance. I mean, I had ex-boyfriends that shot at me for Christ's sakes. You know what I mean? I have a man that
put a pistol in my mouth. Like, I was in a state of constant hypervigilance all the time. And it was, I'm going to tell you whatever you want to hear, or what I think that you want to hear, right? So I can walk away, so I can still be breathing, right? And it's like, how do we let go of that? Like, it's
very difficult when you think it's your picker and you think there's something wrong with you, and you have this big fat magnet on your forehead. Like, why do I keep ending up with the same relationship with a different person? You know? And for me, it was the same stuff. It starts out really great. They say all the things you really needed to hear, and you're such a good person, and I love you so much, you're so beautiful, and blah blah blah. And then little by little, it becomes something entirely different. And how did I end up back here again? You know, and why is because, just like you said earlier, the attraction to what you feel like you need in another person. You know, power, or somebody that you could respect. Because I felt like because I was such a steamroller, I felt like I could manipulate and walk all over people, and I did no respect. I had no respect for anybody that I could. But I was this alpha girl who I promise you I was not when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was shut down and
too. I was
sweet.
A doormat.
I had my arms around my mom's leg. I didn't want to go to school. I was all shy. I had a hard time standing up for myself. So I had to go from such an extreme of little sweet Lisa to being like, in your face, mess with me, you know, and it was the school that I was going through in my childhood, you know, of how do I protect myself? How do I take care? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to be okay? Yeah. And this isn't. It's. I don't regret, but I do know that environment will breed somebody who feels like they need to constantly be on.
Yeah. I remember when I was in grade school, so I was in 3rd, 4th grade, I had, you know, this really, like, just scraggly hair. I had pimples all over my face. I had these like, extra, like, vampire teeth coming in on the top and the bottom, right? People made fun of me.
Overbite.
People made fun of me all the time, and I hung out with the popular girls, too. I don't even know why they hung out with me, because they made fun of me all the time. Like, I remember specifically this one time, like, it sounds so silly bringing it up, but we were playing hide and go seek. And I remember they just played hide and go seek so they could get away from me.
Oh.
And I remember crying in the bathroom for the rest of recess, and I was so sad. And then the next day they come up to me like nothing happened, and then they want to hang out with me, and I hung out with them some more, right? So in retrospect, self-abandoning, right? And just like, okay, well, I want to be with the popular girls, right? And I would do this to myself over and over again, and people would literally just like laugh at me and make fun of me. And I remember sharing something about my family history that was really cool that my dad told me, and I remember everybody in the class called me a liar and was like laughing at me and making fun of me for the next week or 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Because they could.
Right, because they could. Kids suck. Kids are mean.
But they know. People know when they sense that you're willing to do anything, be anything to be a part of. Yeah. They sense that weakness. Yeah. You know, and they sense that.
And so I'm like, okay, so when I saw these big, you know, tough men, I'm like, oh, okay, so I need to be big and tough for you to respect me. Yeah. For you to show me some sort of like respect, right? And I was good at it, man. And some trauma happened to me when I was really young, and I became physically violent without my own consent. Does that make any sense?
Does it make any sense?
Like, I became so physically aggressive towards my sisters, everybody in my household, and towards other people, and what had happened to me, right? This assault that had happened to me when I was 13 years old. Could you imagine? I was a 13-year-old little girl when these awful things happened to me. And I just became extremely violent. And I remember my mom trying to put me into boxing, and so I had that one little outlet, but it just helped me become a better gang member. That's all it did, unfortunately.
We valued anger. We valued that energy. We valued the tough girl, tough guy. We valued that because we wanted so desperately to finally feel safe. I wanted to finally feel safe. I should really just speak for myself. And growing up like that, but I also felt like I felt a false power when I would get angry. I felt like to be the one, even to this day, I cannot I do not like getting on a plane and not sit in the emergency row. I want to be that person. And it's not because I'm some saint that wants to take care of all the people on the plane. I just want to make sure that I'm in a control position where I have power in some way, shape, or form. Like that's what I mean. Like that's how ingrained it is. It's just gotten to be tempered down, and I trust God, and I'm intuitive now, and it's not that. But there's still these elements of wanting to feel like I'm not that I'm not needing to be at the effect of other people. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't know. So this is a lot. When I was growing up, I did not have the popular kids situation. I was a loner, and I wore black all the time, wrote poems about death, carved it even in a desk once, and I was raped by 3 guys, and I went through a lot of stuff around what happened in my childhood. But by the time I was 16, 17 years old, I was dropped off in a gang neighborhood. No, it wasn't. I was kidding. 15 years old, and I ended up walking in the middle of the night, and I'm white, but I am white. I am very, 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 very pale. Like I glow in the dark. There's no hiding. There's no hiding in the dark. I'm a girl walking in a neighborhood, and I ended up. This is how God works. I ended up going. I saw this guy that I knew from school. I didn't know him, but he was the head of a gang there. He was the head of the gang of my school. And I saw him, of all people. And I'm standing there, and I'm pacing outside of his house, and I'm super afraid. I'm going back and forth between being somebody who is scared shitless to a person who is like, I've got to somehow get out of this neighborhood. I had no way of getting home. It was so crazy. And I went up to him, and I said his last name because everybody called him by his last name. And he was so different than he was in school. And somehow he knew who I was, and I had no friends. I was a burnout. I was somebody who walked around. Do you remember Breakfast Club? Remember the girl who was wearing black all the time and would shake her hair and like make designs with her dandruff? Like I didn't have the dandruff, but I had that whole like, don't mess with me. I was writing suicidal poems for a hobby. Do you know what I'm saying? I was really, and I was not anywhere the way I am now. And his dad was a hairdresser. And we waited for him to come home, and I had this serious gash across my face from a fight I had with my mother, and I had Neosporin on it because it made me look tougher. You know, like I wanted everybody to know this is what was happening, that there was violence in my house, and it was so stupid. Look how tough I am. That's how I thought. And at the end of it, his father drove me home, and I thanked his son. I thanked the gang leader guy, and I said, I was so nervous, guys. I could hear my heart beating in my body. And he said, just don't hate me. And I was like, because everybody thought I had such an attitude, and I thought I was just keeping people away from me so that I could feel safe. I had no tools. I had no idea. Yeah. You know, and like I'm 52 now. It's taken a very long time to change and to change and to change and to surrender and to be vulnerable and to heal and to find out where the real power comes from, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I pushed people away throughout a long period of my life. It kept people at an arm's distance. That
was a huge thing for me. Probably one of the biggest, especially with men, right? Like being able to let down my guard and my walls, right? For you to see me, because I already knew whatever man that I was when I was in the streets, when I was out there, I knew you were going to hurt me, right? So I was going to close off every single angle to my heart so you couldn't hurt me, and I was going to let you know about it. Like, but the problem with that me, right?
is that we will then attract emotionally unavailable people that are not going to be super invested in us giving our heart anyway. Mm-hmm. And so we will attract people that are totally fine being an arm's distance, mm-hmm. right? And it will be people who can't go there, who are not healthy, and we will recreate the same thing over and over again. The thing that we think is protecting us mm-hmm. is actually recreating it.
Right. Exactly. And so the only way that I have been able to break this cycle, a huge part of it has been rebuilding my relationship with my father. I've been in long-term recovery for just over 4 years, or it'll be 4 years here
Coming
in a
up.
little bit. And, you know, I am unbelievably proud of the woman that I have turned into.
I'm proud of you too.
And the relationship that I have rebuilt with my father, I didn't really have a relationship with him until I was in my late 20s. He would always reach out to us. Like, I was homeless for 5.5 years, give or take. And, you know, and I had a car, and then I was homeless, where I was walking around literally because I had nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a phone to call anybody. I was going to the bathroom outside. You know, I was sleeping in abandoned houses. I was sleeping in the little like kiddie areas, like where kids play in parks and stuff like that. And I was trying not to fall asleep because I didn't want to get raped.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I didn't want to get whatever was on me stolen off of me. And the only thing that has ever worked for me is to be able to change and become this vulnerable woman, right? Because I used to think vulnerability makes you weak.
Yes, me
vulnerability
too.
gets you
Yes.
killed.
Yes.
So just be careful, Lauren,
Yes.
right? Be careful. And that's, I mean, yes, maybe obviously in the streets, but it's, if I want something real, right?
Yeah.
If I want to build something real
Yeah.
with somebody, I have to be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is I have to trust God, right?
Yeah.
And I have to work on this relationship with my father that I lacked when I was a little girl so I can heal some of the things that damaged me for years, which is why I picked on emotionally unavailable men, because he was emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
And I have healed so much of this, but there is so much to go, Lee.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to it, you know, and
Yeah.
I get into a lot of fear around it, a lot. You know, all the time. And I'm thinking like, oh, I just don't want to get hurt. And I'm like, stop trying to control the situation, because the minute that I say that to myself, I'm going into some sort of defense mechanism so I don't get hurt.
Yes,
right?
right.
And then I don't want to be the needy codependent asking for the reassurance all the time, right?
Which I've definitely done
I want to
that.
be the
I
confident
definitely did
woman.
that.
So how do I do that, right? I lean on my women.
Mm-hmm.
I trust God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if it's not meant to be, then it's going to walk right out of my life.
Which helps us, because we also are very much attracted to women that are like us, that have gone through what we have and get it, and have also found the solution too. And together we feed each other with the solutions that we found. You know, it's kind of interesting, you know, lest I depict myself as being tough all the time. I was not. Because nobody can keep
Same.
that up. You know,
Same.
and what would happen though, and this is the tragic thing, is that I would be with people I had to be on with, that I had to be self-guarded with, that I had to make sure that they had enough reason to be there, either because they needed me or they wanted something from me. And I would be strong and I would be guarded, and then I would break. I'd break. Because you cannot perpetually stay on like that. And I would be vulnerable, but now I would be vulnerable with people who would use what I said against me, who would find my weaknesses as something to exploit, who would throw things back in my face
Make
later.
you feel safe and then throw it right back in your
Who
face.
would make me dependent upon them because I was so desperate to have somebody. You know, one of the guys that raped me, he said, you know what, he knew that I was raped by 2 other guys. He was the third one. And he said, do you know what you really need? You really need a big brother. You really need somebody to look out for you. And I was vulnerable, and I shared with this complete stranger because I had nobody to talk to. And we were both in a parking lot in the middle of the night on the Strip in Long Island, New York, having a conversation we should not have been having, but I was so depressed. And so done,
Right.
you know? And so there's this person coming up to me, being all the nice guy. He's going to be that person for me. He's looking for somebody to, you know, rescue or take hostage or whatever. And I tell him, and he talks to me on the phone, and he tells me he's going to protect me. He's going to be that person. And he raped me so much worse than the first 2 did. He was wanted by the police for a whole bunch of things, and the chief of police came to my house and said, I totally understand if you don't want to press charges, because we're not going to be able to make this stick, but we have him for some other things that we're looking at. And I said, just promise me you're going to go after him, because it was so bad. I was bleeding, and brought to the hospital, you know, and go home and my mom is like annoyed. I have inconvenienced her, you know, and I go to the hospital and I feel shamed.
Yeah.
I feel like they look at me and they think, what did she do? Mm-hmm. What did she do? And whether or not they thought this or not, I'm just telling you that was my mindset, right? I felt alone. I felt like I needed to I felt like I just didn't have what I needed to be okay, but I felt like I was going to make myself somehow have that, right?
Yeah, and we start developing like these just like horrible, you know, call them what you want, character defects, just
survival skills that really honestly perpetuate the need to survive in it. You know, I was gonna, if your only tool is a hammer, then all you will see are nails, and you will attract nails, and there won't be a screwdriver and no screws. But like, that's what it was. Like, I knew how to interact with dysfunctional people because all I knew was dysfunction.
Right.
And until we get into recovery, nothing changes.
Right. Well, and we don't want to admit that we're toxic too.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh no, I admit.
No, it's this person that did that to me.
I had a lot of shame, so I was willing to.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, at least for me, I'll speak for myself. So like, I didn't want to admit that I was possibly the toxic one, right? I wasn't the one over here like being verbally and emotionally abusive, right? But I'm the one sitting there, and I'm the one that's staying there, right? And then I'm doing the lying and the manipulating behind the scenes, right? So mine's less as bad as yours, right? So I don't have to look at myself. I was always with somebody that was worse than I was,
right?
So I didn't have to look at myself,
right?
And
then also to use the victim story to be able to manipulate.
Oh yeah,
you know, like this is how my first date would go for many years with a new person. I would spend the entire night, the entire day, talking about my life, and if he made it through all of that, he qualified to go to the next level. Because I mean, he had to sufficiently feel sorry for me, you know, but was so bad about that because I was keeping that story going. I wore that like a cloak, you know, of protection, you know, that I used what happened to me to get what I thought I needed, but I drew people to me who used what happened to me to do more things to me. And I couldn't,
not realizing what we're actually doing.
Oh my God, we were the manufacturer of our own misery. It was our interpretation, our story of who we thought we needed to be, what we were willing to do, where we thought our power was going to come from. The last place we were going to look is where we ended up in recovery, is within.
Right. So it's like, so how do we change these things, right? How do we actually change these things, you know? And as a person in long-term recovery, the work that we do here, if we do it over and over and over again, and then we share it, we start to share it with somebody else, this awareness starts to pop up, right? This awareness starts to pop up, and it almost like it turns into the awareness turns into a responsibility, right? Not only a responsibility to the other people that you're helping take through the process, right? But the responsibility to yourself, right? I wake up every day and I say, God, please help me to be the woman that you have wanted me to be this entire time, right? And I didn't start to see the difference, but I remember my twin said something to me, because I used to have like rage, blind rage, and
which is terrifying.
Because it got me what I wanted, right? It got me what I wanted right then. Bam, done. Didn't have to do anything else, right? I was just going to be big and scary for you to give me what I wanted. And I remember the first time that I noticed that she had said to me that I changed, and she told me no to something. I asked for something and she said no. And I said, okay. And we were sitting in the car, and I saw her whole body go like this, because I used to put it
because she was like braced, ready to be hit.
She was ready for, I don't know if she was ready for me to hit her, or she was just doing this on not realizing subconsciously. And I look over at her and she goes, oh. And then she just took a breath and she was like, God, I thought you were just going to scream at me, you know? And I go, you just told me no, like, I'll take the bus. It's not a big deal. I asked her for a ride somewhere. Now I remember, you know, and
do you know there was this thing that happened, because I had I had so many different versions of myself. It's ridiculous, but I felt very responsible for my sister. She was a year and a half younger than me, and she would say that I'm the only mother that she ever knew, right? So there was some stuff that she was going through, and I had my first house from stripping, and I had her move in. And so I was like wanting to take care of her. But I was so into drugs and alcohol and so much PTSD and so few tools and so messed up. And I was seeing this doctor who was trying to fix my hormones because he was so sure that that was my real issue. It was like, you know, the whole idea that it's just you're a woman, so it's just your hormones. So trying to fix my hormones with all of that undealt with, unmet PTSD, all the energy, all the anger, all the fear, all the story about myself, all the victim stuff, everything, all the rage, and I lost it. I lost it so badly that I told her she had to move out right now or I was going to kill her. And it took years to go back and say, you know, an amends and say, like, I terrified you and I am so sorry because I really had you move in with me because I wanted to help you, but I was so not okay myself. And I'm the oldest sister, but I'm only a year and a half older than you. And I'm telling you, like, I don't have what I need. Like, I'm not okay, you know? And then shortly after, about, I think it was a year later, I ended up bedridden in and out of a semi-comatose state and lost everything from everything. But I wasn't doing these things for fun. I was doing all these things and treating people the way that I was and treating myself the way that I was for survival. Mm-hmm. I fully believed I didn't have a better way. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. Yeah. I desperately wanted a better way.
Neither did I. I remember, I mean, my older sister got into long-term recovery when she was 17 years old, so we were 15, but she moved away, right? So I didn't have any sort of, you know, and my parents are normal people, and, you know, I didn't have any sort of role model to show me that. And, you know, she would tell me over the phone, and you know, and I remember, God, I remember her calling me when I was homeless, and she'd call me at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's like 5 o'clock her time because she's in the I don't know if it's the Midwest, Texas. And you know, she'd say, I just wanted to hear your voice because I had a dream that I found you dead in a trunk. You know, and I would laugh. Mm-hmm. I would laugh, thinking that that's funny. Mm-hmm. It's not funny. My point is I didn't have any solid role model until my twin, you know, came in here. And I was like, okay, well, she was just as messed up as I was. You know, so if she could get it, I can get it, right? Because I didn't believe in myself anymore. I just stopped believing. I was like, I'm not worth it. I'm stupid. I'm dumb. I'm ugly. I'm all these things, right? Mm-hmm. Everything that everyone's been telling me most of my life, right? From people that don't give a
what we tell ourselves, we internalize this stuff, and that's what keeps us stuck in all the situations that we keep getting into is these ideas.
Right. And people kept telling me to have this faith and have this faith. And I'm like, how do you have faith? Like, I barely even believe, right? I barely even believe that I can get out of this mind state.
Right.
Because I'm so engrossed in the streets and you know,
and the self-concept.
Yeah, just all of it. The way I was making money, just everything. I was not even ashamed of myself because it took guts to do the things that I did.
Exactly.
I mean, it took balls to do the things that I did, but it was, I didn't know any other way. Mm-hmm. I didn't know any other way, but I knew that I wanted to be done. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be done. So I'm like, how do I have this faith that everyone keeps talking about, right? Mm-hmm. And so I believed enough because I saw my twin sister go through it, right? Mm-hmm. And I was around all these women that were sparkly and pretty, and I'm like none of these girls, trying to separate myself again, right? And my little belief that I had, gained with a little bit of experience, and the suggestions that I took initially from my twin sister, my belief with that little tiny experience turned into just a little flicker of faith. And I started to see a way out.
Yeah.
I started to finally see a way out. And when I got separated long enough from the lifestyle and the drugs and that pain, right? My defense mechanism, my survival instincts, the things that I do to survive, to push people away, to lie, cheat, steal, whatever it is, right? To protect myself, that worked for me when I was homeless and in the streets and doing everything that I was doing, no longer served me.
They were no longer attractive.
And I got into pain real quick. Mm-hmm. Oh my God,
Yeah.
real quick. Because I could do something. I could go over here and rob,
Right.
Joe Schmo over here and not feel two things about it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally know what you're talking about, because whenever the fecal matter would hit an oscillating device, my mind would always be like, you can go strip, you can go this, and
Well, if I don't put the shopping cart back at the store now, it bothers me. I mean,
Right?
seriously.
Right?
It's crazy. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go
No,
ahead.
it's true. If there's a cute saying that, I got into some old behavior, and then the saying goes, if it was old behavior, you wouldn't still be doing it.
Yeah.
And so in recovery, it's like the safe place. Nobody's going to judge the things that we did, and nobody's going to judge us necessarily. Oh, no, that's not true. People are capable of judging, but the road gets narrower. It becomes more and more uncomfortable. The things that were totally okay before start to become not okay.
I never understood what that meant until I got a little bit of time.
Yeah, and you know what? And I want the road to get narrower.
Me too.
Because
Me too.
And it's not like I don't feel like I have to become something. I felt throughout all of my addiction, all of my dysfunction, all the PTSD, I felt like, and the codependency, I felt like I needed to become something because I had this idea that I wasn't okay for the way that I was, period. Like who I really was not enough or too much.
Yeah.
And what I ended up finding was that I never needed to become something. I needed to unlearn all the stuff that I had taken on about who I thought I was and who I thought I needed to be.
Yeah.
And what I thought my true peace of mind, my security was really supposed to come from. In every situation I ever get into where I'm not willing to be authentic and follow the yes and honor the no, every situation that's like that is always some old script, some old programming that it's like a song that gets stuck in your head that says, you can't do this because blah, blah, blah. And honestly, do you know whose voice that is? That is the 3-year-old. That is the 6-year-old. That is the 8-year-old. That is the 12-year-old that tried to kill herself. That's the 17-year-old. That is different places in my life where I made decisions about who I thought I needed to be okay.
Yeah. Right.
How much did I need to tone down my too muchness? How much did I need to be better than my not enoughness? How can I be the person that I need to be okay? And instead, recovery says you need to go within. You need to look within and start taking responsibility for your part in things. You need to find out what that is. And what ends up happening from that is we realize we are not the piece of shit we thought we were.
Yeah.
That was the biggest lie.
Yeah.
And that we are not at the effect of other people. And we don't have to be. And the ideas of who we thought we needed to be, the people-pleasing, the self-abandoning, the manipulating, all those things kept us in toxic situations.
Yeah, I never understood why it's so painful. I love one of the things that you have in 107 where it says it's not recovery that's painful. It's the what does it say?
It's the resistance.
It's the resistance to it, right? And why is it so painful for us to change?
Because of deep-rooted ideas that are so young in our programming of who we think we need to be okay.
Right.
This is something. Our thinking is so attached to basic survival instincts. It is
literally
like leeches.
reprogramming our brain.
Programming that has attached itself to what biologically we need to do to be okay.
And what has kept us alive, right?
I have warped thinking attached to DNA. Do you know what I mean? Like I have warped thinking that says sacrifice yourself.
Not on me.
Sacrifice. You know what? Hold on to this resentment because you got to keep this person where you could see them so that they don't ever screw with you again. Meanwhile, that resentment is causing cancer. Making you uncomfortable in your own skin and making you want to use a drug, a person, or alcohol.
And I want freedom from that.
I want freedom from all of it.
Today I want freedom from all of it.
And to be able to find out where the real power is. The power is in being honest. The power is in seeking guidance within. The power is in being helpful to another person, is being tapped into anchored into a deep place within us. That if you are somebody who believes that you need to manipulate another person to be okay, or you need to rescue or feel sorry for another person to feel good about yourself, if you feel like you need to put up with a situation because you don't feel like you deserve better, or that you can have better, or that you'd be okay, if there's gaslighting going on outside of you, or you're doing it to yourself, then maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't have believed I could be where I'm at now. I am nowhere near the person that I was. Yeah. And what's crazy is when I see something that reminds me of who I was, I recognize the programming and I don't want it. I'll feel the feeling as if I'm still that person, and it'll bring it out of me. If I get pissed, if I get really upset, right? I don't want anger. I don't want to blow up. I don't want that. So if I ever get to a place where I'm angry, it's hit some serious pay dirt. Class is in session, and something needs to heal.
Yes, yeah. Pain is my barometer for something that needs to heal. I couldn't agree with you more. I think you are the one that actually taught me that. Like, if I'm blowing up to this level, like, what's really going on, right? Today, it's really hard to make me angry today.
Yeah. And there's hardly anybody that can ever do that. Because I no longer feel like I need down, it's easier to heal.
Because I was always with around people that I felt like I had to defend myself all the time. I have to defend myself. I have to I explain. No, don't get me wrong. No, that's not what I meant. No. All the time. And people people around me, either they weren't questioning me and it was in my own head, or they were putting me down, and I felt like I had to explain myself all the time. And I remember my older sister is the one that brought this to my attention, and she said to me, "Lauren, why are you so defensive?"
Yes.
Why?
Right.
And I said, because I feel like I've been fighting my whole fucking life.
Yes.
That's why.
Yes.
And she said, "You don't need to fight with me."
Yes.
She's like, "Honey, stop.
We're on the same side."
She's like, "Stop." She's like, exactly what she said. I am on your side. And I was like, okay. And I'm getting emotional talking about it because I love my older sister very much. She's my hero. I love Megan.
But we were terrified.
And
we were terrified to be able to be vulnerable like that.
So today I don't feel like I have to explain myself to anybody. And goddamn, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling because
you know
I
what
know
else?
who I am.
Not just that.
I'm still learning, but I know.
I will speak about you too, and I'll say this because I know you so well. I will say this. You could take criticism.
Yeah.
You could take criticism without... You have moments.
Sure.
Moments.
Sure.
And where I'll be like, and then we'll get off the phone, or we will like go on to something else, and then you'll come back and you go, so at least I need to make an amends because, I heard myself. And you know what's so cool is... me too. I get to call you and go, I was a little bit off. I'm going to go meditate.
Your micromanaging, as you called it, is like non-existent today.
Thank you.
It's non-existent.
Thank you very much.
Just for the record.
Thank you very much. But I will actually go, I'm going to go take a break. So I'm going to go meditate.
Yeah.
We're going to do a do-over. And then let's go. Because, at the very core of it, we trust in each other's heart. And we trust each other that even though we still have stuff that we need to heal that could come up, we trust in what we really value now. You and I, if we met out in the world before recovery, it would have been a whole different ball game.
Fuck yeah.
I don't think we would have liked each other at all.
I don't know.
Although I'm older than you, so maybe I would have been that person to take you under my wing.
Maybe, yeah.
So stupid. But today we get to heal these things, and I want to come from no story about to do anything. I don't want to date somebody or work with somebody or do anything from a story of who I think I need to be, because I activate the martyr and the person who needs to be the big shot, and then I am screwed. So I surrender and I stay surrendered, and I keep going, God, you're in charge. The meeting space in the recovery store, it belongs to you. And whatever it is you want, this show is what you brought. Whatever it is you want, you just guide me. And so I make sure that I stay right-sized, because I don't want to activate
The survival.
The old me. Because she's clueless.
Yeah.
She's clueless.
Yeah.
She blew up relationships with people who were actually kind too. Like I actually had people, because I attracted some people who were very caring, passive aggressive maybe, but caring. And I blew up these things. You know, I never cheated on anybody, but I got cheated on because I was totally willing to stay.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just it. I mean, there's so much that we could say about this topic of being, you know, the people pleasing, the self-abandonment has now been learning what the yes is, honoring the no, and recognizing that I don't need anybody in my life if hurting myself earns me their presence.
Right. And going through this process doesn't mean that we're not going to experience pain. But at the end of that pain, I know that I've been true to myself, right? Huge thing for me is relationships. I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified, right? As most people are, men and women, right? Whether people want to say it or not, I'm here to say it. It's terrifying, right?
Yeah.
But being vulnerable today is something that it comes natural to me, right? And this is who I am, you know what I mean? And I'm still growing, right? And I want to grow with you, right?
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful to me because I was never like that, right? I had to be what I thought you wanted me to be, and then when I wasn't what you thought I wanted me to be, I got tongue twisted there, you know, and then I was worthless.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, so this process doesn't mean that we're never going to go through pain again. It just means that at the end of it, I know that I'm true to myself.
Yeah. And not just that, but knowing that the only kind of safety and security I will ever feel is when I'm listening to my higher power. You know, because I really don't believe that I could possibly narrate what anybody's highest good would look like, and I certainly don't know mine.
Right.
And any given day, and how I used to live, I ran my life. I ran it. I ran it, and I ran it into the ground, and I
Lit on fire.
And I lit on fire. I stayed down, and then I had to motivate myself with false motivation and affirmations and whatever to get myself pumped up, lots of caffeine, etc., to be able to go tackle the big bad world that I thought was out there, but it was all up here. It was all in my own mind.
Perspective.
It was always in my own mind.
Perspective and
It was all
perception.
projected out, you know? And so it's great to be able to, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of like, you know, we do inventory of ourselves, and we look at our part, and then we share it with other people. And it's like the relationships that we form with the people that we attract in recovery, it's the same kind of magnet to people who were dysfunctional before, but now it's being used for the purpose of what we really want, which is healing. So we're going to attract similar people who get it, but people who are focused on the solution and learn tools, and we shorten each other's learning curve because of it.
Yeah.
And we validate each other. Like you said in the beginning, where we really wanted to be seen, we wanted to be validated, right? But we validate it. Like when I've had some things happen, I had a relationship that ended very codependently bad, ended up in a little bit of trouble, and I went through shame about that. And then I told you, and you were the only person, other than an ex-husband, but you're the only person I told because I knew you would get, before I was ready to unpack it, of what happened. And because it was so difficult for me. It was unhealed stuff driving the situation I ended up being in, bringing it to a head and showing itself to me. And I had to walk through that, you know, and I did it. Yeah. And I learned, and I healed.
I remember that.
And I met incredible people because I was willing to level up. And so I'll say this in our Bad Girls Gone Good episode. Our chutzpah to be willing to be tough enough to go wherever, to do whatever in recovery for the right purpose, fueled by the right power source, is one of the most amazing, empowered experiences.
Amen.
You know, and as we reach our hands back to former us's, right? And we say, come talk to us. There's nothing that you say, there's nothing that you did that could possibly make me see you as unlovable. I will see past it, and I will know that you were probably just as scared as I was, and probably running on just kind of the same scripts of who you thought you needed to be okay and to be loved.
Absolutely.
Laura, I love you so much.
I love you too.
I love you too.
I love you too, boss.
It's the Lisa and Lo Show. Anyway, if you want to come talk to us, we're at the Recovery Store. And thank you so much, babe.
Thank you for having me.
The opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them, and do not represent any 12-step program, should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. And you can catch all of our episodes by going to themeetingspace.com. You can be on a future episode by clicking on the intake form or write us through the contact form. And definitely come down and visit us at the Meeting Space or the Recovery Store. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV Radio app. You can get our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeart Radio. And stay tuned, and next week we'll have another episode for you. So thank you for joining us. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission, and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The Recovery Store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the Recovery Store and the Meeting Space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you, who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.